Good morning, viewers today, and welcome to KU Elimu program. My name is Patrick Maina, and I'll be taking you the subtopic simple interests. And just before I start, may I say that mathematics is a subject that is taken by learners to be a very complicated subject. But that is just but attitude. What you need to have is three things. The three things that you need to have in order to conquer this particular subject is, first, you need to have tables with you. And when I talk about tables here, you need to acquaint yourself with table 1 up to table 9. From that, you also need to have the formulas. You need to have the formulas. You also need to acquaint yourself with how to compute. And that is what we call computation. And to handle the three, you need to have what we call logical reasoning. Logical reasoning. Now, when I talk about tables here, table 1 up to table 9, very crucial, because we say in multiplication is a binary operation. At any given time, you're only supposed to multiply 2 digits. After that, you need to have the formulas. Of course, the formulas have to be claimed by each and every candidate, so that once you arm yourself with the basic tables, that is table 1 up to table 9, then you can be able to apply the formulas in order to compute the different problems that you'll be encountered with when you'll be trying to solve mathematics. Now, there are some tips. Better. There are some tips that you need to have. I've said you need to have the tables. You need to have the formulas here. Then there's what you call computation. To handle the three, you need to have what you call the logical reasoning. Let me talk about tables briefly. I've said the only table that you need to master is table 1 up to table 9, because at any given time, you're only required to multiply 2-digit number. Now, there are other numbers that can be multiplied when you use your logical reasoning. In that I mean, when you talk about whole numbers, there are numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, and the rest. You continue to count and you get numbers like 64, numbers like 80, and so on. there's a correlation between some of these particular numbers when you're carrying out multiplication. For example, if you take a number like 64 and multiply 64 by 25, when you look at 25 and relate it with 100, you realize that 25 is a quarter of 100. And so it's very easy when you're multiplying 64 by 100, because 64 by 100 will give you 6,400. Suppose there is a question that calls for you to multiply 64 by 25. How then do you get the answer to 64 times 25? Very easily. As I've said, there is a correlation between 25 and 100, in that 25 is a quarter of 100. Now, to multiply 64 by 25, it's like saying 64 100 times divided by 4. Because 25 is 100 divided by 4. So to get the answer to 64 times 25, it's like taking this particular number, which is 64, it's like taking 64, dividing 64 by 4, and then multiplying the answer by 100. That is by 4, 1 by 4. 64 divided by 2 is 32. 32 divided by 2 is 16, giving you 1600. By that I mean, any number multiplied by 25, it's like, for example, 84 multiplied by 25, it's like taking that number, dividing the number by 4, and then, which will give you 21, and then multiplying 21 by 100. Same case applies to a number like 64. If you multiply 64 by 15, I'm still on tables. Don't forget, I'm still on tables. There is a relationship between a whole number when a whole number is multiplied by 15. Because if you look at 15, this 15 is comprised of 10 and 5. Remember, 5 is half of 10. 5 is half of 10. So, multiplying 64 by 10 is very easy. You get 64 multiplied by 10, that will give you 640. When you multiply 64 by 10, remember earlier at the lower level you are taught about the total value of numbers, which is very key as far as multiplication of numbers is concerned. So 64 times 15, it's like taking 64, multiplying by 10, which will give you 640. But again, there is a 5 here. 64 multiplied by 5, remember 5 is half of 10. If 5 is half of 10, then it means 64 multiplied by 5, it's like saying 64 10 times divided by 2. So when you take 64 times 10, you get 640. And if you divide 640 by 2, you will get 320, which will give you 960. That is a simpler way of carrying out multiplication by breaking apart numbers. And this mostly applies to numbers like 25, numbers like 15, numbers that you can be able to relate to them. Now, I'm saying this because later on, we are going to see how the aspect of multiplication of this kind of numbers can be applied and can be a time saver when you're carrying out multiplication in the subtopics that you're going to cover today. And so with that, there are other numbers still that can be multiplied very easily. Take a number like 25 times 25. I'm still on tables. 5 multiplied by 5 will give you 25. Then when you have got, you see, these are what you call perfect square numbers. 25 times 25, you take 5 multiplied by 5, you get 25. It means any number that ends with 5, its square must also end with 5. For instance, 5 times 5 will give you 25. Then take 2, add 1 to 2, you get 3. Multiply 3 by 2 to get 6. And you realize 25 times 25 will give you 625. Take another number like 35 times 35. I've said perfect square that any perfect square that ends with 5, or any number that ends with 5, its square must also end with 5. So take 5 multiplied by 5 will give you 25. Take the first digit here, which is 3. Add 1 to 3, give you 4. Multiply 4 by 3 will give you 12. Let's see the reverse of this. In instances whereby you are required to get the square root of numbers that end with 25. Let's take the first number, 625. What is the square root of 625? If a number ends with 25, if a perfect square ends with 25, then its square root must end with 5. So I've dispensed with the 25, the last 2 digits. Then I'm left with 6. Then I'll ask myself, which are the 2 multiples of 6? Sorry, which are the 2 factors of 6 that gives you 6? 2 factors of 6 that give you 6, but the difference is 1. And the 2 factors are 2 and 3. That is 2 multiplied by 3 will give you 6. Out of the 2, take the smaller number. The smaller number is 2, and that gives you 25. And so the square root of 625 is 25. Take, for example, the second number, which is 1225. What is the square root of 1225? Again, this number is ending with 25, which means its square roots will end with digit 5. Consider the number formed by the first 2 digits, which is 12. Get the 2 factors of 12, whose difference is 1. And the 2 factors of 12 whose difference is 1, the 2 factors are 3 and 4. If you multiply 3 and 4, you get 12. Out of those 2 factors, take the smaller factor, which is, this is the 3. That gives you the square root of 1225 as 35. Good for that. Now, let's come to the application of those particular concepts of multiplication as far as working out problem is concerned. And in our subtopic today, which is simple interest, to answer the question to simple interest, one thing that you need to have is the formula. And the formula for finding simple interest is principal times rate times time or over 100. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 variables here. The first one is interest, which is dependent on principal, rate, and time. When you talk about simple interest here, simple interest is the money earned by money saved or deposited in a bank account, and that particular interest is based on the original principal. And so to continue, I would like to give you the definition of these 4 variables that are applied as far as calculation of simple interest is concerned. Number 1, I have interest, which I've said this is the money earned. So interest is money earned. Remember, anytime a customer or an individual takes money in the bank, by the act of saving, that is putting money in the bank so that you can be able to get interest, that money that you keep in the bank is what we call the principal. Then we have got the rate, which is the percentage at which the interest is calculated. Then we have got the time. This is the duration in which the money stays in the bank, or the time taken for an individual to pay money that is borrowed from a bank. Then we have got a rate here. This one is always given as a percentage. Rate is always given as a percentage. One thing that I like to emphasize as far as time is concerned, it's mostly given in years. Time, mostly given in years. And hence the word PA, which means per annum. Very clear here. So when candidates are trying to solve any problem pertaining to simple interest, one thing that you need to be wary of is time, because that is where the trick will be. Because as you'll be calculating interest, check on time. Let's look at the first example. First example on simple interests. First example on simple interests, whereby we are told that Wanyama deposited 84,000 in a bank, which paid simple interest at the rate of 10% per annum. How much money altogether did he get if he withdrew all the money with interest earned at the end of 7 months? A very good question there. So to answer this particular question, when you are answering this kind of question, the first thing that is supposed to do is to read the question and understand. Don't try to attempt the question when you have not read the question and understood the question properly. After reading and understanding that particular question, what follows is what we call question interpretation. Question interpretation. You see, as you are reading through the question, we have got keywords that will help you answer this particular question correctly. And as you are reading this particular question, there are those things that you'll be looking for, considering that the formula for finding simple interest is given as principal times rate times time. Remember, time is always all over 100. So first thing first, read the question properly, get the correct question interpretation. So what you need to ask yourself, according to the formula that we have, is in this particular question, do you have the simple interest? The simple interest is not given. Number two, is the principal given? That is the principal. Is it given? The principal, remember, is money borrowed or money deposited. The principal is given as 84,000. Is the rate given? We are still on the first part of the question, that is question interpretation. Depending on how well you interpret this particular question, then you'll have a very easy time as far as working out this particular question is concerned. And so, the rate, according to this particular question, is given as 10%. 10%. Then we go to the next variable as far as the formula is concerned, which is time, which is given as 7 months. But don't forget this. The simple interest, the rate is given as 10% per annum. And you see, we are having a situation whereby the time given here is 7 months. So what you need to do first, you need to express this time, which is 7 months, you express it into years by dividing 7 all over 12. This will give you time in years. After that, we have our question interpretation here, whereby you have said that the principal is 84,000. We have the rate 10%, time 7 months. But interest is not given. Remember, the question again is asking you to find the amount. And for you to be able to get the amount, you need to add the principal plus the interest. This is what is going to give you the amount. So for you to get the amount, you need to get the principal, that is money that was deposited in the account, plus the interest, which is the money earned. And so, using our formula of finding interest, which is principal times rate times time over 100, we'll now substitute all this information. We substitute this into this particular formula to be able to find the interest. And so we say interest is equals to P. We start for principal. It's 84,000. We have R, which is the rate at 10%. We have time, 7 all over 12. Now, what remains is to compute and get the correct value of the interest. So we'll say by 10, 1, by 10, 10. Then we have by 10 again 1, by 10, 8,400. We'll talk of by 2, 6, by 2, we have got 4,200. We have got by 6, 1, by 6, 7. So if you multiply, it's 700 there. 700 by 7, this will give you 4,900. So 4,900 becomes the interest. But the question is asking us to get the amount. To get the amount, you need to get the principal, that is, money that was deposited in the account initially, and the principal was 84,000. Add this to the money earned, which is the interest, 4,900. And when you add the two, that is 4,900 here, 88900. This will give you 88. 88,008,900. Remember, that question is a question that was tested in KCP last year. That was question number 19. And the year before, a question to do with simple interest was also tested. Let's look at question number 2. It appeared in KCP 2018. And this question was a question that required learners or candidates to calculate the amount invested. And so let's go through the question. Kinja invested money with a financial institution that paid interest at the rate of 5% per annum. After 60 months, the money earned an interest of 5,000. How much had he invested? Again, the question gives time, not in years, but in months. Let's look at the question. And so we have said that the first thing that you're supposed to do is to have the formula for finding simple interest, which is principal times rate times time, but rate is all over 100. That is the formula that is supposed to apply in all the cases where either of these variable is being asked. Having written the formula, the second question that you need to do, or the second step in solving this particular question, is to do what you call question interpretation. Remember, I say the first thing you're supposed to do is to read the question and understand. After you have understood the question and highlighting the keywords are words that can help you answer the question, and those words are found in the formula. And so, if you try to go through the question, you realize that Kinja invested money with a financial institution that paid interest at the rate of 5%. So you need to ask yourself, we are on question interpretation. A simple interest given? Let's see. Yeah, the simple interest is given as 5,000. Ask yourself, go to the second aspect of this particular formula, which is the principle. Is the principle given? You look at the question and you realize that the principle is not given. Go to the third aspect of the question, which is rate, and you realize that rate is given and the rate was at 5%. The fourth element of this particular question is the time, and the time is given as 60 months. Remember, KCP question number 19 gave time in months. 2018, the same question is giving time again in months. That tells you something, that if you're not keen as far as conversion of time from months to years is concerned, you're not going to get the question right. And so, with our formula here, you can now try to substitute this information here into our formula there. And so we start by saying, we have got simple interest. Is it given? Yes. The simple interest is 5,000. We continue. Is the principal given? The principal is not given. Is the rate given? Yeah, the rate is given as 5%. Is the time given? Yeah, the time is given as 60 months. But you see, when you're calculating interest, the rate given here is 5% per annum. So divide the 60 months by 12. And so we go to the next step. 5,000 P times 5 or over 100 times 60 or over 12. Remember, these steps are very, very, very important, because as candidates in class 8 are preparing themselves to join Form 1, when you'll be doing secondary mathematics, each and every step here counts. A mark is always awarded for each and every step that is correct. And so we continue. Divide 60 by 12. 12 goes 112 go 5 times. Then, now, if you look at this number here, it's all over 100. And we have got 5,000 here. To save on time, you rather don't simplify 100 by 5 and 5 multiplied by 5. You rather have 5 multiplied by 5, which is 25 or over 100, which will give you 5,000. 25 over 100 multiplied by P, this will give you 25 over 100 P. You see, it becomes very easy when you're doing the simplifying with multiples of 100. As we are going to see, 5,000 is equal to 25 over 100p. For us to be able to get the value of p, you need to multiply. If you want to make p to be the subject formula, to eliminate the number so that you can be left with p, you multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 25 over 100, which is 125 on both sides. So this will give you 100 goes with 100 by 25, 1 by 25, 1. We are left with p on one side. Then here, 25, 1, 25. Something else again here. I'm still having 100 here. Instead of multiplying or simplifying 25 by 1 and 25 by 4, I rather divide 5,000 by 25. Because 25 will go once, 25 will go 200 times. And so it becomes very easy when you're multiplying 100 by 200, which will give you, it's supposed to be 2, which will give you 20,000. And so the question is asking you to get the amount that was deposited, and we get it as 20,000. Now, for our class 8 or for our candidates, remember these are questions that were introduced and taught in class 7. In class 8, they are taken to the higher level, whereby the question is on compound interest. The difference between compound interest and simple interest is that with simple interest, interest is calculated on the original amount only. But when you come to compound interest, the money keeps on changing. The principal keeps on changing because interest is always calculated at the end of each and every year. And when that interest is calculated, it is added to the principal, the money that was there at the beginning of that year. And that is what we call compounding. And so we are going to look at an example here. We are going to look at the first example as far as compound interest is concerned. And it's a question that was tested in KCP 2018. And to be specific, the question was number 15. And the question goes like this. A businessman saved should be 900,000, 9 million in a fixed deposit account, which earned compound interest at the rate of 15% per annum. How much money did he have in the bank at the end of 2 years? Again, the formula is still the same. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time all over 100. Only that this time when you're calculating compound interest, the approach is different from the approach used when you're calculating simple interest. And so we start again by reading the question for understanding. After reading the question for understanding, you do what you call question interpretation. And so, question interpretation. Number one, the interest is not given in that particular question. Let's go to the principal. It's given as 9 million. Not 90 million, but 900,000. The rate is given us. The rate is given us 15%. And again, time is given as 2 years. Let's see the difference in approach when you're calculating compound interest, which is different from the approach used when you're calculating simple interest. And so, with compound interest, interest is calculated on yearly basis. And so we go, the formula, if you want to get the interest for the first year, first year's interest will be, we're using the same formula, principal, which is 900,000, rate, which is at 15%, time, we're not going to write 2. It's calculated on yearly basis, which is 1. So, by 100, you'll get 1. By 100, you get 9,000. Now, there is something that I said when I was talking about multiplication of numbers. If you look at 9,000 here, multiplied by 15, you realize it's very easy to multiply 9,000 by 10, because in 15, we have got 10 plus 5. And so to multiply 9,000 by 15, I'll first of all take 9,000. This will save you time. I'll first of all take 9,000 multiplied by 10, which will give me, let me do it here. 9,000 multiplied by 10 will give you 90,000. But 900 multiplied by 5, it's like multiplying 9,000 multiplied by 5, it's like multiplying 9,000 times 10 divided by 2, because 5 again is half of 10. So the answer to 9,000 multiplied by 10, if you take that answer and you divide that answer by 2, you get the answer to 9,000 multiplied by 5, which is 45,000. 0,005, 135,000. $135,000. Remember, it saves you time. 9,000 multiplied by 15, it's like saying 9,000 multiplied by 10, which is 90,000. And since 5 is half of 10, 9,000 multiplied by 5, it's like 9,010 times divided by 2, which gives you 45,000. So, if you add the two, you get 135,000. So 135,000 is the interest earned at the end of the first year. Now, this interest is compounded or added to the principal that was there at the beginning of that particular year. So 900,000 was the principal at the beginning of the year. Add to the money earned, which is 135,000, which will give you 1,035,000. So this becomes the principal at the beginning of the second year. So you use the principal at the beginning of the second year. This rate is the same, again times 1. 1 means the second year now. Check by 100, get 1. By 100, get 10,350. We can do it the wrong way. 10,350 multiplied by 15. This will give you 0, 5, 3, 0, and 1. Then we have got 0, 15, carry 1, 16, 1, 5. Hope I got that one correct. This will give you 5, 5, and 1. So 155,000 let me see that again. 10, let me start here, 900,000 times 15 over 100. This will be, let's see, 9,000 times 15. Let me do that again. So it was 900,000 times 15% times 1. This is 100, 100. This is 9,000 times 15. This is 0, 0, 0, 9, 0, 0, 0, 0, 45, 135,000. I've confirmed. Interest at the end of the first year. So the principal was 900,000. Add to 135,000. $1,035,000. 1,035,000. This becomes the principal. At the beginning of the second year, the rate is the same. Times 1, 100, 100. Let's see. 10,350 multiplied by 15. This is 0, 5,301. This is 0. 25 carry 2. That is 17. Carry 1. This is 5. Hope I got it right. 0, 25 carry 2, 17. Carry 1, 5. 0, 5, 12. This is 4, 5, and 1. Sorry, this is 5. Sorry. Then we have got 5 and 1. So 155,250. This becomes the interest at the end of the second year. And this interest, remember, is supposed to be added to the amount that was there at the beginning of the second year, which is 1,035,000. So if you add that, 250, 0, 5, 2, 8, 8, 1, and 1. Sorry. 5, 5, this is 0. This is 9, 1. So it is 119,0250. $1,190,250 becomes the amount at the end of the 2 years. Now, the same question can also be answered using the formula amount is equals to principal into brackets 1 plus R over 100 to the power of n, whereby the amount is not given. The principal is 900,000. 1 plus the rate is 15% to the power of n. So 900,000. 1. If you add 1 plus 100 and plus 15 over 100, this will give you 115 over 100 to the power of n. So amount will be 900,000 times 115 over 100 times 115 over 100. So this n here represents the number of years. So 900,000 is a principal rate times rate to the power of n. So if you do this one correctly, I can leave that one for the learners to continue. And if you work out this question correctly, you still be able to get the total amount, which is 1,190,250. So if you do the correct simplifying and computation, you will get the correct answer. And with that, come to the end of our lesson today. And until next time, it's goodbye to the viewers.